Good day. My name is Somto Chukwukachi. Course name Server System Security Server 4220. Instructor name James. And then this is my POP3S and SMTPS presentation. Now we'll begin. So, Secure Mail Protocol Lab, POP3S and SMTPS configuration and handling. So this is cybersecurity lab research presentation. Protocols POP3S ports 995 and SMTPS port 645. So on this we'll be using the Ubuntu Linux, Windows Server, and then the Kali Linux. So in this lab we'll be basically be using the Ubuntu Linux, is the Windows Server, and the Kali Linux like we used in other labs. To proceed, so the POP3 versus the POP3S overview. The POP3, which is the port 110, this retrieves email from the mail server, and then it transmits credentials in plain text, insecure. So any credential that comes in, it comes in plain text. And then the POP3S, that's the port 995. It uses SSL/TLS encryption, and it encrypts authentication and session data. So it encrypts authentication and session data, and then it prevents credential interception via packet sniffing. So this is just the overview of the POP3. Basically, this is basically the overview of the POP3, which is the port 110. And then on to the next slide. So the Dave-Cart mail server, the Linux. This is the open source IM AP and POP3 server for Linux. It's commonly used on Ubuntu server. It supports SSL/TLS encryption. It's a lightweight and secure by default. It's used in lab to configure POP3S. So for this, in this concept, in this week's lab, we were dealing with Dave-Cart mail server on Linux, and then this is basically giving us an overview of the Dave-Cart. It's an open source IMAP and POP3 server for Linux. It's commonly used in Ubuntu, and it supports SSL/TLS encryption. To the next slide. So installing Dave-Cart on Ubuntu. So these are the commands you put on Ubuntu in order to install the Dave-Cart on Ubuntu. You use the sudo apt update, and then you use the sudo apt install Dave-Cart POP3D Dave-Cart dash IMAPD space -y, and then you enable the POP3 protocol in Dave-Cart.co. So it's enable POP3 protocol in Dave-Cart.config. So you configure the SSL in 10-SSL.config, and then you restart service, then using the sudo systemctl restart Dave-Cart. This is basically the command in running the in installing the Dave-Cart on Ubuntu. Then configuring POP3S, that's the port 995. So on Ubuntu, you set SSL equals to yes in 10-SSL.config, and then you use the snake oil certificate for lab environment, which is enable INET_listener POP3S in 10-master.config, and then you ensure ports 995 is active, and then you verify with the SSL-TLMP grep 995. So this is basically the Ubuntu confirming the 995 is active and ensuring like all the certificates for all the configuration for the lab will enable the 995 to be active. So on to the next, though, the POP3 hardening recommendation. So you disable plain text authentication using the command disable underscore plain text underscore auth equals to yes, and then you have to force the SSL. So on most of them, it's going to be SSL is equals to yes. So you have to change the yes equals to required. So you got to change SSL equals to required. So you restrict the TSL to 1.2 or higher, and then you disable insecure POP3, that's port 110, and then you restrict access using firewalls. So on to the next slide. So SMPT versus SMTPS overview. So SMPT, which is port 25, it sends mail between servers. It's often unencrypted by default, so it doesn't come encrypted at all. So it's an open message, so it's not encrypted. And then the SMTPS, that's the port 465, it uses SSL/TLS, and then it prevents email interception and MITM attacks. And then submission port 587 uses star TTLS. So this talking about the SMTP, that's the port 25, which sends mail between servers, and then is often not encrypted, it's unencrypted by default. And then it tells us that the SMTPS, which is the port 465, it uses the SSL/TLS. And then it prevents email interception and MITM attacks. And then the submission port, which is the 587, uses star TTLS. So if you look at my slide right here, it literally gives us the overview. And then the postfix mail server Linux. So it is a open source mail transfer agent, the MTA, and a secure alternative. It's a secure alternative to send mail. So it's another alternative in sending mail, and then it supports the TLS encryption, and then it's used in lab to enable SMTPS. That's the port 465. So we can use this postfix mail server to enable SMPTS in lab using Ubuntu, and then it's a secure alternative to send mail, and it supports the TLS encryption. Okay, installing and configuring postfix. So this is basically the command that we put in Ubuntu to install and configure the postfix. So you put the sudo apt install postfix-y. This is to install the postfix, and then you select internet site configuration. So once you install it and it's installing, it's going to ask you to select the type of configuration, and then you're going to pick the internet site, and then you have to put the edit. You have to edit the /etc/postfix/master.tf. Then you follow that up with on comment SMTPS service, that's the port 465. Then you enable the SMTPD underscore TLS underscore wrap mode equals to yes. So once you put in the nano code, you should be able to enable the SMPTY mode equals to yes. And then the SMPTS hardening postfix. So you enforce the TLS 1.2 plus only. So you disabling open relay, so rejecting unauthorized destination with the command reject underscore unauth underscore destination. Then you exclude weak ciphers, ANOR, MD5, and you restrict my network to subjects to local subnets. And then you implement fail to ban protection. So these are my hardenings for the SMPTS postfix. And the Windows IIS SMPT configuration. So you install SMTP server role via server manager. This is the configuration of SMPT on the Windows. So once you install the SMTP server role using the server manager, so once that is done installing, you have to use the IIS6 manager for configuration. You cannot use any other one. It has to say the IIS6. And then you bind SMTP service to port 465. So once you're done installing and configuring, you have to bind the SMTP service to port 465, and then you enable the TLS encryption. So once the TLS encryption is enabled, you have to verify using the netstart dash an. Then um, the SMTPS hardening for Windows. So you disable open relay in relay restrictions. You require TLS encryption. You restrict anonymous authentication. You install trusted SSL certificates. Limit access via Windows firewall rules. So these are my SMTPS hardening. Like disabling open relay in relay restrictions, you have to require TLS encryption in SMTPS. To for protection, for more protection, you have to restrict anonymous authentication. You have to um, block unauthorized access. You have to install the trusted SSL certificate, and you have to limit access via Windows firewall rules. So lab validation. So with all this, you have to use on the Kali Linux to scan. You have to check all of this. Once you're done with the Ubuntu, you have to check it on Kali to make sure it aligns. So you use the mmap command. So once you use the mmap command, you put the IP address of the Ubuntu. So once the IP address is put into the Kali, it will show us all the open ports. Same as well goes for the Windows. So once you've configured your Windows and then you go to the Kali, you have to um, use the mmap command and put the IP address of the Windows, and then once that's there, to show you the ports that are open on Windows. So for this lab, once you're done with the postfix, with the SMTPS and everything, once you're done configuring and installing, once you run it on Kali, you should be able to see that on there. So these are my references for today's lab, and thank you.